Hi everyone and welcome to my new video where we are setting up my bullet journal for 2025. The notebook that I'm going to be using is this gorgeous A5 size notebook from Leelajournals, which is the most beautiful notebook that I've ever seen, and when I first saw it I knew I had to buy it. Of course, I started off by writing my name on the first page of the journal, and I love how this first part was already decorated, so I didn't have to do it myself. For my setup, I wanted to do something pretty simple, and I also wanted to try out this pocket idea that I saw on Corin's video. The idea is that you cut this first page that is usually a bit stuck anyway, and create a pocket from it by gluing it on the bottom and left side on the page underneath. Usually I've made the pocket myself for my grid spacing ruler, but this was definitely a lot quicker, so I'm probably going to do this for my next journal setup as well. For my cover page, I decided to go for this design where I have these big numbers on the center. I tried to pencil them in as well as I was able to, as drawing them was a bit scary. If you don't want to write the numbers yourself, you could always just print them out and cut them so you could glue them in your journal. I was thinking of doing that, but I usually prefer the hand-drawn look, so I decided to go for that once again. Besides the numbers, I also drew a simple frame around them and added some simple leaf doodles for the decorations. I wanted something similar to my November theme from 2022, so that was my inspiration for this cover. I will link the video of that in the description so you can check that out if you haven't seen it yet. Because my numbers were a bit wonky, I decided to color them black so they would look a bit cleaner. For this I used my Tombow fudenosuke pen, so coloring would be a bit faster. By the way, I will link all the supplies that I used in the description, so go check that out if I forget to mention some of them. To add a bit more depth to this cover, I drew some lines on the leaves with a thin 005 fineliner. This instantly made the leaves look a bit more interesting, and is also very simple to do, so definitely give these doodles a try, especially if you are a beginner. After that it was time to cut the Dutch door, and I wanted to do this because it was a simple way to make the cover page feel a bit more interesting. This can definitely be a bit nerve-wracking though, if you've never cut the pages in your journal before, but the shape is super simple to cut, so there isn't much that could go wrong. I used my corner rounding tool to cut the corners, and this is probably one of my favorite bullet journal tools, as I can create identical corners very quickly and easily. I often keep the first pages in my bullet journal quite neutral, so I usually go for a black and white color palette and use gold as an accent color. I did this for my 2025 setup as well and colored the frame with a gold gel pen. I also put a piece of scrap paper under the page so I wouldn't accidentally color the page underneath. Because the gel pen can easily smudge if it hasn't dried properly, I rotated the notebook while I was coloring so I wouldn't accidentally smudge the frame with my hand, and this worked out pretty well. Next I grabbed my iPad so I could make a textured paper that I could use to decorate my journal. You could use just some watercolors and watercolor paper for this as well, but I thought that using my iPad would be a bit quicker and make less mess, so I went for that. Watercolor paper can also make your journal a bit chunky, so this way I could use just a regular copy paper. Creating this textured paper took maybe 2 or 3 minutes, so it was really quick and easy to do. I used the app called Procreate and added a textured background that came with some process that I bought, and then just colored the background with watercolor process using a couple different colors. This was really easy to do, and if you don't have an iPad, I'm sure you could do this with a computer and some free photo editing software as well. Finally, I added some small paint splotches to add a bit more texture, and the paper was done. I will write the details of the process that I used in the description in case you are curious. Here you can see how the textured paper turned out, and I love the soft colors that it has. I know I said earlier I like to go for a black and white color palette, but Pink is my favorite color, so I never get tired of it, and I felt like that went well with the whole vibe of this journal too. I glued the paper on the page underneath so it would show up behind the Dutch door. My cover page is now almost done, and next I moved on to decorating the pocket on the left side. I wanted to add a bit more color to the spread and had a difficult time choosing which color I should use. I felt like the same textured paper would have been a bit too much, so I grabbed my random pile of cardstock and decided to go for a dark grey color, which has a hint of brown in it. I love how this color added some contrast to the spread and blended in the black numbers a little bit. I think this whole cover spread took a little less than 1.5 hours, and it was probably the most time consuming spread out of all of the spreads I made. My cover pages often take this much time, but that's okay for me, as I like to put a bit more effort in them. By the way, sorry that you can see my head pop up a couple times in this video. I also have these short baby hairs in the front of my hairline that have the mind of their own, and apparently they wanted to say hi to you as well. After I was done with the pocket, I put my grid spacing ruler in there, and I actually used one that I've made for one of my old journals because I didn't want to make a new one. In case you are interested in how to make these and how I use them, I've made a video about that which you can find in the description. Anyway, the next spread that I made was all about goal setting. I always like to include this spread in the beginning of my journal, especially when the new year is coming, because it's a great time to reflect and set up some new goals. Last year I actually didn't end up filling the spread for some reason, but I still wanted to include it in my new setup because I think I will use it this time. The layout of this spread is really simple, as I will just write some goals I have for the different aspects of my life and then pick the 3 most important ones. After that I will write a couple action steps on the bottom so achieving the goals gets a bit easier. 2025 is actually going to be the year when I turn 30, so I also wanted to make a bucket list for myself of 30 things I want to do before I turn 30. These are some fun and easy things I would like to do, like knitting a new sweater or cardigan, but I also have some more difficult tasks like cleaning my closet or running 15 kilometers. I think it's important to set some fun and easy to achieve kind of goals, as well as the more challenging ones, so you don't get burned out from having too many challenging things to accomplish, but also don't end up being too easy on yourself. Finding the balance is very important, and my goal for next year is to be kind to myself and push myself forward gently. It's also really important that the goals are something you realistically can achieve. I, for example, started running this year and have run 10k once, so I think running 15k will be something I can achieve in 7 months. I would love to hear which goals you have in 2025, so let me know in the comments. Anyway, lastly I added these gold lines under the titles for decorations, and that was it for this spread. I like how it was kind of already decorated for me thanks to the Dutch door and the colored papers. Next I'm setting up my future log, and to save some time I made these calendar stickers for the mini calendars. I used Procreate for making these as well, but I think you could use Word or Google Docs instead too. As I happen to have a silhouette machine, I also used that to cut the calendars so I wouldn't have to do it by hand, and I printed this on a regular sticker paper. For the titles I used this Monolife cursive font and a fineliner in size 05 I think. This is my go-to future log layout as it has the perfect amount of space for writing birthdays and upcoming events. I've tried a couple different layouts as well, but having all the 12 months of the year to see at a glance just works the best for me. For the decorations I drew a leaf doodle between the months with a gold gel pen, and this again was super quick to do, which was a bonus for me. Sometimes simple things work the best. Then it was time to set up my budget tracker spread, and I wanted to try out something a little bit different, so I ended up creating a collage on the top part of the spread for decorations. I really liked the pink paper that I made, so I wanted to use that again and felt like collaging was the easiest way to do that. Besides the pink paper, I also used this printed book page, which I will link in the description. I have an actual old book pages as well, but those are quite yellow and brown, so I felt like this printed one suited the color scheme a bit better. I wrote the title on this grid paper that I had because it wouldn't have stood out otherwise from the old book page. Then I added pieces of washi tape to add a little bit more decorations, and I think both of these are from Journal Away. I bought these washi tapes last year, and the grid and the flora one that I used on the previous spread are definitely my favorites because they go well with basically every spread. After the decorations were done, I moved on to the layout itself. This spread is mainly for tracking my income from social media as I have to pay taxes at the end of the year, and having them written down somewhere makes it a lot easier. You could also use this kind of spread for tracking your expenses, but I just haven't found that to be very useful for me, as my phone basically does it for me. When I tried tracking expenses, I just found that very difficult because I always forgot to write them and then had to check them on my phone later so I could write them down, and that just felt a bit pointless for me. With trackers, it's important to figure out what works the best for you, and sometimes you have to try out things just to find out that they don't work for you. And the great thing about bullet journaling is that you can just leave them out of your journal or try something else. When I'm setting up a new journal, I also like to think about the order of the spreads I'm making and put the ones I use the most in the front, as I don't use an index. Future log and budget tracker are definitely the spreads I use the most, but I'm also trying out a couple new spreads that I've never done before, so stay tuned for those later in this video. On the right side I made a wishlist tracker, or I don't know what to call it. But anyway, here I will just write things I would like to buy and also the store and price of them, so I will be a bit more mindful about the fact if I need them or not. On the bottom I also decided to include a simple savings tracker where I will just write how much money I saved each month. This is a new addition to my budget tracker, so we will see how it will work for me. Next we are setting up how I'm feeling spread, which is basically a mental health check-in type of spread. I think it's important to remind yourself of the things that make you feel good and also things that can take a toll on your health. The way this spread works is that I have 3 different writing prompts that are routines that make me feel good, bad habits to be aware of, and what to do when feeling down. I will just list some answers to these prompts, and later in the year I can refer back to this spread and see how I'm doing. I think a spread like this can be really helpful, especially if you are someone who struggles with mental health, as it can help to see signs of depression or anxiety before you are in a bad place mentally. I, for example, have a tendency to avoid doing things which can cause anxiety, so when I notice that I've been binge watching a Netflix show, it could be a sign of avoiding something or having anxiety. Anyway, on the right side I'm making a daily routine page where I will write my ideal morning and evening routines, but I will also have 2 different types of routines depending on whether I'm feeling good or not. Some days you may have a lot of energy, so it's easier to follow your routines, but some days you might need more rest and just do the bare minimum, so this spread kind of helps to recognize that. I feel like you can see all sorts of perfect morning routines on social media where people wake up at 6 and are very productive before they go to work or start their day. I'm definitely not that kind of person. For me, a good morning routine is that I get up and have enough time to make my bed, change clothes, do the basic stuff like brushing my teeth and washing my face, and then have breakfast before I head to work. Again, it's important to know yourself and what works for you. Some people are morning people and feel more productive in the morning, and others are more productive in the evenings, and that's okay. You also don't have to be productive all the time. One of my favorite quotes is "Be patient with yourself, nothing in nature blooms all year." And that's something I try to remind myself about. This was again a super simple spread, and I just drew the same leaf doodles for the decorations, but this time I decided to color them in because I wanted them to stand out a bit more. Now we can move on to spread that I'm probably the most excited to start using. This spread is going to be my monthly challenges spread, which I've tried maybe 6 years ago, but it didn't work for me back then, so this time I made some changes to it which will hopefully make it work a bit better. I started off by adding a folded flip out on the left side, and I kinda wish I had used a colored paper for this, but I think this will do just fine as well. On the flip out I glued down some calendar stickers where I can track my progress with the different monthly challenges, and I wanted to make a flip out so the spread would be a bit easier to use when I've created my monthly setups. Without the flip out I probably wouldn't have been able to fit all the calendars on the spread, so that was also the reason why I wanted to try that out. The main reason why this monthly challenges thing didn't work for me in the past is that I decided the challenges when I set up the spread, and later felt like the certain challenges didn't work for me during the month, or I just didn't get the excitement about the challenge. Because of that, I decided that I'm going to pick the challenge when the month starts, so I can take into account my energy levels and life situation in general. On the right side I wrote a list of monthly challenge ideas, and I have more than 12 ideas, so I have more options to choose from. This way I can make sure that I have a challenge in December that is something I can realistically achieve, as I have a couple different options I can choose. When I was writing the different challenge ideas, I tried to include some easy challenges but also some more difficult ones, so I can challenge myself if I feel like it. It was also important that the challenges are something I would be excited to complete, as the challenge shouldn't be a way to punish yourself. Last time I, for example, had a 5-minute blank challenge, and that wasn't realistic at all for me, as I didn't have any rest days and I just couldn't hold a blank that long. I think I made it to 4 minutes, but I wasn't enjoying the challenge at all, so this time I definitely will skip the blank challenge. Now I have things like reading a book for 15 minutes and taking a photo every day. For January I will probably choose to walk 7,000 steps every day, as we are having a step challenge with my sister and mom, where the person who has taken the most steps during January will win. We will see how that will go. For the decorations I just made a simple collage on the bottom and used some stickers that I had collected over the years. On the left side I wrote the goal of the challenge and made a little legend, I guess, which will show how I will fill in the trackers. As I said earlier, I'm really excited about this spread, and who knows, maybe I will update you on my progress on social media. Let me know if you would like to see that, and if you have any great ideas for monthly challenges, leave them in the comments as well. As you can see, I will fill the trackers in with a circle on the days I've completed the challenge, and if I have days when I skip doing it, I will mark it with a square. You could also use different colors for this, but I find using just a black pen for everything works the best for me. My next spread is dedicated to content and theme ideas. I feel like having a list of video ideas is very helpful, even though I haven't had the time to make videos lately, but I'm hoping I have more time for that next year. I will also write all the questions you've asked me here, so I can make a dedicated video or short about that. So if you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments. These boxes are 12 dots wide and 16 dots tall, so I should have quite a lot of writing space for the different ideas. I also have quite small handwriting, so if your handwriting is bigger, you might need more space for your layouts. Coming up with a theme every month is also a thing I struggle with, so hopefully writing out some theme ideas would help with that. In 2024 I used my bullet journal a lot less and also skipped 1 month entirely for the first time ever, which was definitely a bit weird, but also very refreshing. I think I need to find a new way of creating my cover pages. or decorating my journal since I'm a bit more busy now that I'm working. For a long time I thought that I wanted to be a full-time content creator, but that wasn't really good for me because I like having co-workers. I'm also an introvert, so I already spend quite a lot of time at home by myself, so I needed a job where I'm not working from home so I could see other people. Luckily I have now found that kind of job and I'm really happy about that, even though I have had less time for creating content on my free time. Anyway, on the right side I'm making a things to check out spread, and here I will write book, TV show and movie recommendations and things like that. This year I bought a Nintendo Switch, so I also have a section for game recommendations. I would love to hear your favorite games, so definitely let me know which those are. My favorite game this year has been Stardew Valley, of course, and I also played Hogwarts Legacy, which was really fun and a bit more challenging. It also worked surprisingly well on Nintendo Switch. Next we are making the last spread of my new bullet journal setup, which is dedicated to my 2025 favorites. I think pages like this are always fun to look at afterwards, so that's why I always like to include them in my setups. I started off by making some collaging on the top as I really liked how that looked on my budget tracker spread, and this was also a quick way to decorate the page. For the title I decided to write the big numbers again and didn't look up any kind of reference for these, which actually might have been helpful because the number 5 was a bit difficult to make. In the spread I will write about my favorite moments, TV shows, movies, games and songs of the year, and I will also have a section for other things like books in case I happen to read them. I didn't read any books in 2024, which I'm a bit sad about as I used to love reading when I was a kid and teenager. I don't know what happened, but somehow I just haven't read much as an adult. I would love to start reading again, so if you have any books to recommend, I would love to hear them. I also thought that now would be the perfect time to tell you about my 2024 favorites, so you might get some things to check out as well. My favorite TV shows this year have been the Baby Reindeer and Fallout. Baby Reindeer was quite scary though, and if you get easily anxious, I wouldn't recommend that. My favorite movies were definitely the second part of Dune and Blink Twice and Smile 2. Smile 2 is a horror movie, so again it isn't for everyone, but I really liked it, and probably I liked that even more than the first part. If you are looking for something more chill, I can highly recommend the Do a Note 10 podcast. They talk a lot about different kinds of topics like some random internet drama, and I love watching the podcast on YouTube while bullet journaling, filming or knitting. Anyway, now it's time for the final flip through and I'm really excited to start using these spreads. This setup was quite simple, but I feel like that often works the best for these beginning pages so I can focus on actually using them. I'm also really happy with the look of the textured paper and glad I decided to try out something different. Let me know what you think of this setup and remember to leave a like and also a lemon emoji in the comments if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!